Hello and welcome to the Awakening Report. I'm your host, Doug Hamp. Delighted to be with you again. I'll tell you, there's so many things happening in this world, but you know what? God is still on the throne. That's the exciting thing. And we have a guest tonight who's going to talk to us about money in the new millennium, money and wealth in the new millennium. And so we're going to get started with that. And joining us is Norm Franz. Hey, Norm, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you doing?
Doing great. Now, you are the director of Ascension Ministries. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Ascension Ministry started out as a church in Fort Collins, and in 1995, and then in 2000, the Lord called me to the nations. And well, actually, I started traveling quite a bit in '97, and then I started traveling full time in 2000. I actually moved to Singapore and did a weekly citywide tourist study and taught on finances, end times, so on and so forth. And I was helping them over there, especially in Southeast Asia. I traveled the whole region, explaining the financial crisis that they had from a biblical perspective. And it was a wonderful experience. God really opened up a lot of eyes, not just to the Torah, but the Torah as it relates to finances in the world's financial system. And from there, I've just been traveling. Traveled until 2011, when my wife Deborah and I started an internet church, where we do a live Shabbat service every Saturday at 1 o'clock um, p.m. Mountain Time. And we are just ministering God's prophetic word to the nations, which is what the call is for Ascension Ministries.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm delighted to be here in Colorado with you. So
Yeah.
that was definitely a treat to meet you and to realize that we're so close. So that's really fantastic. For
Well,
those of you,
I really enjoyed the two conferences that you had me
yeah,
come and speak at this year, and they were real blessings to me. And we got a lot of really positive feedback about the whole thing, about both conferences.
yeah, I really appreciate you coming. And those are so much fun to just discuss different viewpoints and how it all fits together. You have to wonder, God could have just made it so amazingly clear to all of us, but but in some ways, like he's like, I'm going to leave that line out so that they don't have quite the entire picture, and they're going to yak about it. But
Uh,
they'll grow, and they'll develop, and they'll seek me by not having all the puzzle pieces here.
well, everybody has to find the revelation of God. Ultimately, we all come into the unity of the faith. And as far as all the different views can go, I'm gonna get real Catholic on you. Um, it's a mystery.
That's really safe. It's a mystery. That works.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's actually great to have different viewpoints as long as we don't kill each other. I think that's kind of the bottom line. So
Yeah.
now tell us about this. You wrote a book called Money and Wealth in the New Millennium. What is that book about? Just kind of give us a
Well,
snapshot and then we'll jump into it.
yeah. Money and Wealth in the New Millennium was written in response to the various financial crises that we have had over the course of the years, especially since 1987. That's when I lost everything. And in the financial crisis that year, and that's when the Lord just kind of pulled back the curtain and showed me the world's financial system from the very foundations of it, and that is that it's built upon dishonest weights and measures, a modern day application of the ancient dishonest weights and measures, which God tells us very clearly in His Torah not to use. And and it was in that process that this book evolved. And I spoke about this for, gosh, 5 years as a monetary economist. And then when I went into full-time ministry, the Lord brought the book together, and boy, I tell you, it has opened up so many eyes. Everything from the man on the street to the housewife to ambassadors and people on Wall Street. I even spoke at the Melbourne Stock Exchange during that time in Australia. And boy, I tell you what, they didn't want it. They didn't want to hear it, but they couldn't deny it. It was a barn burner.
Wow. Now, this is something people can get on Amazon for those of you that are
Yes.
watching. Money and Wealth in the New Millennium, a prophetic guide to the New World Economic Order. Yeah, I can imagine this wasn't popular with some people. Okay, kind of, you've given us the overview. Why does somebody need to read this book? How is it going to open our eyes in a way that maybe we haven't seen before?
Well, probably to go right to the heart of the matter is that both the financial system, investments and banks and so on and so forth, and the business system, the economic system, is driven by money. And when we understand that all money today is created in a bank in the form of a debt through a ledger book entry.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that loan that is drawn up gets deposited into the borrower's account, that loan or that debt becomes money.
Mm-hmm.
And consequently, all money everywhere in every country has been created that way, and therefore all money is debt. And that is why the debt issue has not, and I just want to tell you in the name of our Lord, it will not be. We are on the very, very brink of that whole thing imploding on the world.
Hmm.
And that is going to be something, that is going to be the thing, and what the Lord is really laying on my heart now, and really has been since 2001. But I mean, we're on the very verge of it right now. Is that this world order, as we know, it's about ready to implode on itself, and we're about to transfer into or I should say, transition into a new world order. And that, I believe, is going to be and this is something that I've pointed out and shared. And I mean, there's scripture verse after scripture verse. When you tie it together with what's actually going on right now, um, and what is obviously coming, then it pretty much lays it out that that's going to be the next, and it's going to be a global order. But the issue is the real difficult part, Doug, is going to be that transition from where we're at now to where the globalists want to take us, where the enemy of our souls wants to take us. And that's what I'm trying to help people understand is coming and how to prepare for it.
Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people may be shocked to discover, probably not our viewers because they're pretty savvy people,
Yeah.
but there's probably some people out there that may be shocked to discover that our dollars, those green things that we carry in our wallets, at least sometimes we do, if you look on it, it says this is legal tender for all debts. And as you explained, it's really created out of nothing. In fact, pretty much all currencies out there are what we call fiat currency.
Right.
And it just means that they're created by an act of borrowing or lending in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you wrote the book, cryptocurrencies were not on the scene. Do you believe that those will have any impact on this coming New World Order? I mean, will that kind of change things, slow it down, hasten it, deflect it?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question. The cryptocurrency, like when you say, well, how much is a what's one of the
Bitcoin.
cryptocurrencies?
Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin. Yeah, that's one of them. There's a bunch of them coming out now. When you say, well, how much is that worth? what's it worth? It's always worth so many what
Well,
dollars.
it's worth $8,000.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
it's
But what
worth
I'm saying is,
other currencies though, other cryptocurrencies as well.
well, but what I'm saying is that it's always priced in legal tender. Cryptocurrency is not a legal tender. Cryptocurrencies is a barter that people have agreed to buy and sell and to use. And there's no controls over it. And you have to understand that the New World Order, the globalists, they control everything, and whatever they don't control, they will ultimately control. And here's what I believe is going to happen is that if you have a, let's say for example, a terrorist attack
Hmm.
or some sort of I mean major disaster, man-made disaster that was financed through cryptocurrency, then you can almost bet that the powers that be will totally downplay it to where nobody will use it. And so, although if you'd have gotten in to cryptocurrency when it first came out, um, you'd be a rich man today or woman.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and but here's the bottom line: is that it is not legal tender. It is a barter instrument, and therefore, depending on how much they put into circulation or take out of circulation is going to determine, and the demand that's on it will determine how many dollars or euros or whatever you're buying it with, it's worth. And so the bottom line is it's only worth as much as they can get you to believe that it's actually worth.
Hmm.
So
Well, that's true for any currency, right? I mean,
well, it
you know.
is, but it's not. But all it is a barter. It's a barter instrument. I mean, precious metals are a barter instrument. Um, for example, but precious metals have an intrinsic value where cryptocurrency doesn't. It's just another. It's been created as a ledger book entry, and then it's been marketed so that there's a demand where legal tender currencies, dollars, euros, yens, will come in and buy it.
Hmm.
And the more the people that want it, the more each unit's going to cost.
Hmm.
And that can't go on forever because not everybody uses it. I mean, right now it's primarily an investment. It's not really, not a lot of people are using it as a currency.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, only time will tell, and of course, none of us knows exactly the timeline as to when all these things are going to happen. If it were to happen in the next 5 years, it would be very difficult in my mind to see how all these things could come together. But
Well,
we don't know.
it
Yeah.
won't come together in 5 years. I think that later this year, or sometime next year, you're going to start to see this thing really start to unwind. And well, the last time we went from the financial crisis through war into a new order was when we went from the League of Nations system after World War One in 1919 when that was established. Excuse me, 1917 when that was established. And then we had 10 years of basically prosperity and so on and so forth, all on printed money. And then in 29 we had the financial crisis. 39 we had World War II, and in 45 we came out the other side with a new world order in the United Nations, and that took 16 years. And so that process of transition, when it starts, is going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight, and the world is going to go through a lot of various convulsions and so on. And a lot of people are going to think that it is the Great Tribulation. And although it may seem like the Great Tribulation, it's not. It's just part of the great end time shaking that Haggai and the writer of Hebrews talks about in Hebrews 12, that leads into the Great tribulation. So I want to encourage everybody, don't get ahead of God in all of this. Don't get ahead of prophecy. And a lot of people have been trying to do that, or do that a lot.
That's a good word. We do have a question. This is from Mr. Ripcord. He says, ask Franz about what he thinks if all currencies, including crypto, will be a thing, or if there will be only one. So that's his question. If
A global currency is what he's talking about. Yeah.
right.
Well, what most people don't realize is that in 48, or I should say in 46, when they established the International Monetary Fund and Bretton Woods, which governed the financial system of the world, there was in fact, a de facto world currency in the U.S. dollar. Everything was priced in dollars: oil, gold, so on and so forth. If countries wanted to buy gold, they had to change, let's say, for example, the Deutschmark. They had to exchange the Deutschmark for dollars and then buy the gold. But more countries are moving away from that because of some of the volatility that has gone on in the U.S. dollar. And so what you're probably going to see, and I believe this will be the process, is that you're going to see some sort of a international trading unit that is made up of a basket of currencies, probably the US dollar, the euro, the yen, maybe even the Japan or the Chinese yuan, maybe the Canadian dollar, so on and so forth. But there'll be a basket of currencies. And just like the Dow Jones Industrial Average is the average of 30 stocks, there'll be a value of that exchange, that basket of currencies that you'll be trading in internationally. You could even go to, you could end up going to a regional currency. Before you go to that, you can go to a regional currency like the euro. We have in America, they have the Amero that's been proposed. And so there's just and I've done a number of teachings on that and explained that these different regions, from the region of the Arab countries to Africa, about putting together a regional currencies. You've got the Amero, or you've got the euro in Europe. You've got the Amero in North America. That would be Canada. That's what they were trying to do when they bailed Mexico out, and that's one of the reasons why the globalists don't want the wall up, is because they want to merge North America. And then you have somebody who comes in who's an internationalist, like President Trump, and he wants to have he's a globalist, but he's not a New World Order globalist. He's an international globalist. In other words, he believes in an international system, but that everybody keeps their own sovereignty. And that's where the battle is at right now. Europe, or I should say England, recognized that. That's why you had Brexit. You had the you had the province, I forget the name of it, over in Spain, that wanted to secede from Spain, and they got
Catalonia. It was Catalonia.
Yeah, Catalonia, that's right. And they got put down in a hard, draconian fashion, because the globalists do not want that. They want to merge everybody. And so in Africa, they have a program over there. They're trying to regionalize that and create a regional currency. And somebody asked me, well, you got the euro, you've got the potential for the Amero. What's the African one going to be? And I said, the Afro. No, no, it was
this whole conversation seems a little bit dated, to be honest, because I mean, obviously the Amero never happened. The dollar is still strong, but cryptocurrency is changing things a lot. I mean, I don't think it would be wise to leave those out of this conversation, because they're really picking up steam. People are very excited about it. There's tremendous power in this. Why would people necessarily go back to some type of printed government issued currency when we now have viable things? And are moving at such a rate that, in fact, there's a new one called IOTA, and it's going to be, it's called the Internet of Things, where you can actually do microtransactions, like buy a coffee, for example, and there are no fees, and it's very quick. It's like in 6 seconds. The problem with the Bitcoin is that there are high fees. It's incredibly slow, and you only got 21 million in the whole world. But something like IOTA is a very different infrastructure. I mean,
Well, it's
I
still going to be.
appreciate where
Yeah, it's still going to
I
be.
appreciate where I was going to say I appreciate where you're going with this, and of course the Bible does tell us that there will be one currency, but I'm not so sure anymore that it's going to be some kind of a Antichrist issued currency or whatever you want to call it.
Well,
it could be
yeah,
a
but
very different.
it would have to be, Doug, because if the system, if Antichrist and the false prophet require that you take a mark before you can buy or sell, there's control over it.
Yeah, but
And
but again, that I think we're kind of thinking like early 2000s here. I mean, the technology has changed so much. The mark may not be a microchip that gets implanted and just so you can get a checkout faster at Walmart. That may be some type of a mark that is left over, kind of like people that were vaccinated for a number of years and there was a mark that was left on their arm. The mark from that vaccine was not the reason they got it. That was simply a byproduct. That was their little souvenir from getting that. So it depends. Because what do you think the mark is going to be? Do you think that's
well,
simply
the mark is going to be, I think, obviously. I mean, the technology is being perfected right now. Is going to be the implantable biochip. I mean, they're already using it. I've got. I mean, I've got pictures, and I mean, I've got chips, I've got injectors, examples, and so on and so forth. And I mean, they can down in Mexico, the attorney general's office down there, 150 of their employees were injected with biochips. Where when they go into the building, everything gets read and so on and so forth. They get identified.
a chip you can put in, a chip you can take out? Is that correct?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
you can put it in, you
So,
can take it
so
out, but there's something that. But see, here's the bottom line: is that when you go back and read the Book of Revelation about the chip itself, or the mark of the beast, you have to understand people aren't just going to willy nilly be able to get it. People are going to have to bow down and worship anti-Messiah, the beast, and then they can get that. And so they won't want to take it out. It won't be something that'll be forced on people. It'll be something that if you want to buy in this closed cashless system, you have to swear allegiance to the beast, and that's when you can get it. Because everybody that doesn't swear allegiance, doesn't bow down and worship, the false prophet causes them, the scripture says, to be killed. So it's not going to be like a lot of, quote, end time prophecies been taught, that it's going to be something that they hog tie and lay it down and force you to take it and inject it in you. That's not how it's going to work. People have to worship the beast first
sure.
before they can even get it. So they won't be taking it out.
Yeah, I would see things a little bit differently. I think the mark of the beast is going to be a genetic transformation of the person. So that's why we have a difference of opinion, because I think that fundamental technology and the reason for getting it is very different. It's not just, I think buying and selling and not being able to is sort of a penalty if you don't get the mark, but it's not a good reason to get it.
But what I'm trying to say is that they're moving us toward a cashless system, period. That is just, I mean, they're calling right now. Larry Summers is calling for the elimination of the $100 bill. They've eliminated the $500 euro. They've limited cash purchases in Spain to $1,000. In France, I think, to $1,500.
I mean, we're already kind of cashless. I mean, I rarely use cash. I use my credit card most of the time. Once in a while, I pull out a couple bills and pay something. But
21.
It's so much.
Yeah.
So much easier.
Only 12% of purchases in the States are cash, and the average is $21.
So do you think when we get down to zero, then we've gotten to the point where it's possible, or what do you think about that?
Well, no, this, like I say, you have to understand the way that the globalists work is the motto of ordo ab chaos, which is order out of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Is that whether it's planned or whether it's something that happens as a result of different things coming together. Um, I remember that there was a gentleman from Japan, and they were talking about crises, and he just said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste."
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's based on the Hegelian dialectic. You have thesis, which is the event. You have antithesis, which is the solution, and when they come together, it produces synthesis or the desired outcome. And every one of the financial crises and the wars and so on and so forth, going all the way back to pre 1900, has moved us ever closer and closer and closer to a one world cashless system.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be controlled by the powers that be. It won't be left up to you and me to determine what we're going to use and so on and so forth. Because if we had all these different cryptocurrencies and everybody could use them, then there wouldn't be one mark that people had to take. And as far as that goes, I mean, like I say, they're doing that right now, and it doesn't have anything to do with the genetic aspects. Now, the genetic aspect may be woven into that, but it will be something that controls your buying and your selling, your ability to walk into a store and purchase something through a mark that's on your right hand or on your forehead. If it's on your right hand, then your handprint will be your identifier. If it's on your forehead, it'll be a retina scan, and you see it on TV all the time. They either put their hand in something and it reads their handprint and it allows them entry, or it's an eye scan and they put their head up on it. If the chip is in the head, it'll all that information will be read, and your retina will be your identifier, your bio identifier. And like I say, and it may be a combination of everything, but it will definitely be tied together some sort of cashless financial system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who do you think these powers that be are? I mean, is it some
Well,
people in a dark room somewhere and they're hiding
no, they're
out?
the New World Order globalists. They're the in Psalms chapter 2. It talks about the leaders and the, how does it put it? They're the financial and the political elite. They laugh and they say, "Come, let's tear our fetters away from God," and so on and so forth. And God, God is not mocked, and He says, you need to repent and worship the Son, is what it says, even in Psalms chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are and that's what I dedicate. I didn't do a whole big thing on the conspiracy, but in chapters 5 and 6, I
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. I show where it's at in the scriptures. I show where it's at been in the past, where it's at now, and where it's going. I produce documents by different world constitutional organizations that call for a global system, a global currency. And you see, when this system collapses, and I don't know if and I monitor this. I mean, I'm a former monetary economist, and this is what I do. This is one of the things I do. Even as a pastor, I still do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is that every financial crisis that we've had since the early 90s, when we had, I don't know if you remember that first blowout we had of derivatives, when Orange County
Mm-hmm.
went belly up, when they went bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
That was a county. We lost some really big insurance companies. We lost one insurance company that survived the 1929 crash, Mutual Benefit Life.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have, and then we went from there, we went to Mexico, which was a financial collapse of a country. And then 2 years later, we had the financial collapse of a whole region in Southeast Asia. And it was all based on money. It was all based on the artificial propping up of the currency and the financial markets through debt, derivatives largely,
Hmm.
and when those things always collapse, always. They can't not collapse. And so and then we went to then we had the dot-com bubble, and then but in 2007 and 2008 we had a worldwide failure of the financial systems, and people just don't realize how close we were to having that whole thing go over the edge. And the only thing that saved it was that the governments of the world stepped up and put the cost, the bailout, even raise spending and so on and so forth. And they put it on their balance sheet because they were the only ones that had balance sheets big enough to bail everything out. And the problem is now is the sovereign debt,
Mm.
including the United States, which as a percentage of GDP is actually smaller than, say, Japan or Germany or Spain or Portugal or any Greece, Italy, stuff like that. Um, but we've got 20 trillion. The worldwide debt bubble right now is in excess of 1.5 quadrillion dollars, and that is just, I tell you what, watch Japan and watch Europe. Those are where it's really going to start. And one of the reasons why the U.S. stock market and our financial system is as strong and the dollar has been as strong as it has been is because you got that money leaving those countries, and they've got to have a place to go, and they've come here to the United States. But
Hmm.
our debt is over 20 trillion now, and that can't last forever either. And the only reason we haven't failed is that we have the biggest printing press in the Federal Reserve in the world. That's the only thing that's kept us afloat. That's the only thing that's kept the world afloat, is the central banks just printing money, lending it to governments so governments can spend it to keep this thing going.
And of course, the petrodollar is very much a part of that. What do you think will happen if and when we have a major shift in automobiles that are not being powered by fossil fuels or whatever oil, whether they're fossil or not, but
Yeah.
oil, because that's happening. It's starting. It's a
Hmm.
trickle right now, but it's going to become, I believe, a tidal wave. We will lose our hegemony of the dollar
Yeah.
because people have to use the dollar to buy oil. So what happens when oil, or let's say gas engines go away?
Well, the petrodollar isn't that big of a deal anymore. That was based, that came out of the whole World War II scenario in Bretton Woods and so on and so forth. So the petrodollar it isn't tied in like it used to be, like it was based on before. And so I don't even, because I mean, you've got Russia and you've got China that are buying. And see, it goes back to the petrodollar was tied to the U.S. dollar being the only international currency when you're going to buy something. If countries wanted to buy petrol from or oil from Saudi Arabia, let's say Germany wanted to, they had to trade their marks for U.S. dollars and then buy it. That's how
Hmm.
they would. That's how they would have to buy it. But
So that's no longer the case. If Germany wants
well,
to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they can
well, they
use
they
euro.
use they use they use they can use euros, and well, they have to find somebody that will sell it for euros. Iran, for example, will sell it for euros. That's one of the reasons why Europe went ahead and um, made the deal with Iran, is because they're buying oil on the under the table using euros rather than trading it for dollars. Same way with Russia. Russia's selling oil to China right now for Chinese currency, and so on and so forth. And so there's been a rebellion against the U.S. dollar, and that's what I'm saying is that we're coming off that standard, and part of that is because of all of the debt that's out there, and then the conflict. You got to remember that in every transition from one world order to another world order since Nimrod, there has been two elements that are always present in the transition from one order to another, and that's financial crisis and war.
Mm.
Pre-World War One, we had the bankers' crisis of 1907, followed by World War II in 1914, followed by the League of Nations out the backside of that. That was the first modern day attempt at a Nimrod style global government. And then we had 10 years of prosperity, a financial crisis, a war, and then bada bing, bada boom, you've got the United Nations system that governed the world system. Now we have financial crisis after financial crisis after financial crisis, and we have the war on terror, as well as all these other wars that are brewing. And generally what happens when the world goes broke, countries go out and start wars, because that flushes everything out and allows them to raise up the phoenix of a new order. And
Mm.
that's what's on the horizon. And so I'm people have asked me if I'm going to do an update on my book, and I read that about once a year, just to kind of remember where we're going on stuff. And we're in the middle of, chapters 9, 10, and 11 being fulfilled right now. And so I asked myself, in fact, I asked Pastor Mark. I said, how do I upgrade this or update this? And he said, here's what, because he read it and agrees with it. He said, here's the best thing to do is, because the debt's gone up so much, every place that says millions, just tell them to put billions. And every place that says billions, just tell them to put trillions. There, he said it's updated, because see, nothing changes. Everything that has been shall be, and everything that shall be has been. And there's nothing new under the sun. This is just repeating itself, but there is a culmination, and it culminates with the coming of anti-Messiah, and then it goes right through that same process again, and that culmination culminates with Messiah's return in Revelation 19. Hallelujah. I'm about to preach myself happy, brother.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, that is the good news. Can you imagine a time when we won't need currency? I mean, of any sort, to have any
Yeah.
kind of transaction. Because, I mean, the only reason we need money is because we lack things, right? Or at least we think we lack things. And so we
Well,
need some more value to make that change.
Well, money really is just a medium of exchange, is all that it is. Is that, if you have corn and I have wheat, and somebody over here, your next door neighbor has cattle, and you want my wheat, but I want cattle, then there's a medium of exchange that you can give me, that I can give you my wheat, and then I can go buy what I want to buy. I can go buy the cattle, and you can sell your corn to somebody else that wants it. So currency has always been designed by God, ever since, even before the fall. In Genesis chapter 2, it says that there's a river that flows out of the Garden of Eden, and there is a river called the River Pishon, and in that land, it flowed into Havilah, and in the land of Havilah was gold, and the gold in that land was good gold.
Mm.
And the bottom line is this: is that there's always been trade going on in God's kingdom, and man has perverted that medium of exchange, because see, when a banker can create a loan through a ledger book entry, and then lend it to you as debt, and put you in debt to him, and I know because I did this as a loan officer, then what happens is I'm stealing from you your very inheritance of your children, and so on and so forth, which is where we're at today. But you see, that's the world, Doug. And I always tell people that, God didn't wake up one morning and go, oh no, the new world order, what am I going to do? See, he knew all of this before time ever was. And the bottom line is that he put it in a book called the Bible and said, study to show yourself approved. And so the fact that all this is happening is just goes right along with what God said was going to happen because of the sin of man. And that's why he says repent in Revelation 18:4, just before he brings that judgment. He says, come out of her, my people, so that you don't participate in her sins and receive of her place. And that's what we do. That's what I do here. That's what we help people understand, how to, not only why it's coming, how it's going to happen, and what they can do to come out of Babylon, so that so that they can limit their exposure to the crisis when it comes.
One of the questions in the chat room was whether you recommend gold and silver.
Well, ultimately, the precious metals is the only monetary asset that's going to survive the crisis. And that's because it has an intrinsic value, and it's always bought the same amount of goods and services. In 1920, a $20 gold piece was $20. You could buy a really good suit of clothes. Today, it's like $1,480, and you can still buy a really good suit of clothes.
Well, yeah, you
And
sure can. You can buy
well,
cheaper ones too, but
well, yeah, you can, but I mean a high-end suit. I mean a
yeah.
high-end suit. The shirt, the shoes, I mean everything from the tie to the shoes. You can. I mean, some people say, "Gosh, $1,400. That's a lot." I don't know. I don't know how you do that. And I just I just tell them, give me $1,480, and I'll show you how it's done.
So no, let's play this out for a second though. Let's say that
Okay.
there's a crisis, the dollar fails, okay?
Hmm.
And okay, we see gold, it starts to go up through the roof because people are like, okay, that's a good store of value. But when it really comes down to buying stuff,
Hmm.
um, do you really think people are going to start bartering with gold
Good.
and silver at that point?
Great question, brother. Great question. And I get that question a lot. Well, first of all, if the dollar crashes, gold really won't go up in value so much as the value of the currency goes down. And
Right, of course.
because gold is priced in US dollars and the US dollars buy less, everything will go up. But not everything is a monetary asset. Not everything is money. That's where precious metals, gold and silver, and even platinum today is considered in its right form legal tender in the United States. Well, and in many other countries, Australia and Canada and so on, and China, etc. And so what will happen is, as long as the financial system is still up, where you can, use your credit card, you can, buy and sell, write a check, or if it's a cashless system, then you can still do you do the transaction through a central clearinghouse, a bank. That's what our banking system does now. It's a largely clearinghouse for transactions. And as long as that system is still up, then what you would do is you would simply take your silver down and or sell it. You find a broker and liquidate it and get more paper dollars to go buy the more expensive goods and services.
Mhm.
And I always tell people that don't buy precious metals in order to try to make money. Just use precious metals as a store of value, to keep your wealth, a portion of your wealth anyway, outside of the collapsing debt-based paper system. Um, if you go after it where you're just trying to make money because you think it's going to go up, then your love of money has just gone from paper to precious metals. And I always tell people that inevitably, if you do that, you're going to end up losing for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And so, if we approach precious metals as just keeping a portion of our wealth outside the system, the paper system, before it collapses, so that it maintains our purchasing power. Because if you have a collapse of the dollar, but not a collapse of the system, your $100,000 in the bank may only buy $50,000 worth of goods and services.
Mhm.
But the precious metals will still buy $100,000 worth of goods and services, and probably more, just because of the additional demand. If the system goes down, precious metals will be the money of the day on the street. And I'll give you an example. There was a woman, one of my clients, and she was going to Russia, and I knew this was just before they canceled the old ruble and introduced the new one. I don't know if you remember that. That was back in the mid 90s, early 90s, 92, 93, whatever. And she said, what should I do? Should I take dollars or whatever? And I said, well, yeah, I'd take some dollars, but when you get to the airport, you need to, get some rubles. And I said, take a tube of Silver Eagles with you. Because if they cancel the old ruble and they implement a new one, it's going to be a little chaotic. But I said, you'll be able to get, whatever you want to get with the silver. Well, the system didn't go down over there, but sure enough, she's in the middle of her mission trip over there, and they canceled the old ruble and they implement the new one. Well, she took her silver dollar that she paid $5.25 US for, and she went to the marketplace in Russia, and she had the purchasing power of anywhere between 17 US dollars and 35 US dollars, depending on the vendors she was dealing with and how bad they wanted that silver. And she came back and she said, I've never really understood all the mechanics that you explain about dishonest weights and measures and inflation and debt-based currencies and so on. She said, I've always just trusted what you were saying, but she said, Norm, now I understand. because women, no offense, ladies, women understand purchasing power. And she had purchasing power. Her $5.25 all of a sudden was worth as much as $35 when she wanted to buy stuff. So she came back with a bunch of souvenirs she wouldn't have been able to buy otherwise.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
And that is the way, and that is just the reality of the dishonest weights and measures, how they work against honest weights and measures when the dishonest weights and measures system collapses. And it's always been that way, and it will always be that way. That's why cryptocurrency, I just tell you, it's more or less a fad at this particular point in time. But in that day, it's going to be one currency, and it's going to be an international currency that people are forced to take. And I personally believe that the precious metals will probably be your underground currency, because not everybody's going to take the mark. Obviously, you and I aren't.
I just to kind of throw this out there for our listeners. I think there's another way to look at it, because I think there's an assumption happening that the currency will be the thing that is underlying the mark, whereas I make the case that it's actually a genetic transformation. And when you look at the artificial intelligence with robotic learning, all kinds of things that are happening. I mean, they have these virtual assistants that can recognize your face. They know everything about you. They can know all of your accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether it's a one currency or not, you could still have access to all of these things, because obviously if you have a cryptocurrency, it's obviously online, right? So let's say I have 300 Bitcoin and I'm a millionaire, but if I'm somehow in bad standing or with the image of the beast, they're like, sorry, you can't make any purchases even though you have all this cryptocurrency. We're not going to allow you into the system in order to buy those things, because I could be barred not based on the currency that I hold, but simply because of my genetic markers. And they could say, no, we know who Doug is. We know that he didn't take the mark, and we are not allowing him to buy. We don't care what kind of currency he has.
But what is the mark? I mean, and it's in your hand or in your forehead.
Right. And again, what I would suggest is that it is a visible leftover. It's a souvenir, a little scar, if you will, that is left over from taking this genetic transformation. So the mark is not, it's not in order so that I can buy, but I'm penalized if I don't get it. And the mark is a genetic transformation so that I am going to mingle my DNA with ultimately the DNA of the Antichrist, who has mingled it with Satan, and then I become a superhuman. Now that sounds good, right? That's,
Yeah,
from a
but you
secular
and
point of view.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean, how would they force you and me, for example, to that genetic change? That would
they'd
have to
say
be
you're gonna. They
that's a whole
it,
that's a whole nother
it's
generation.
well,
It's
maybe
it's
no, not
almost
but not
like a
necessarily.
hybrid type of thing.
But it can
I know
happen.
where you're going
Yeah,
with it, but
they do this on living people. They can
yeah.
change your genetic, your DNA in a living person. This is with CRISPR technology. In living people, they can change their DNA. So, that's my take on it. That's how I see this whole thing coming together.
And that could be part of it, but it's still going to be tied to money because the love of money is still the root of all evil. It always has been and it always will be. And so it's going to be tied back to some sort of financial exchange, some monetary exchange of some sort. It will be more than just a genetic code. It will also be what you have in your bank account.
Well, bank accounts do motivate people. There's no question.
Well, and that's just
You know,
it. Yeah.
but so does the prospect of eternal life. That also motivates people. And we see in Revelation chapter 9 where people will seek death and it will flee from them. Obviously, something happened to them that changed them from the ground up so that they do not die, even though they're trying to die, but they don't die. So something did happen to them. But anyway, that's how
Yeah.
I see it. But this
Well,
has
it's
been
going to be
fascinating.
it could be a combination of both of those things. But
Sure.
I will tell you this,
Right.
under no uncertain terms, it's also going to be tied to money.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put I'm going to put your book in the comments section here for people to take
Huh.
a look at that. But tell them where they can get it again. Um,
Well, you can go to our
yeah,
you
just
can go to our website, ascensionministries.net, and Ascension is ASCENSION ministries.net. And or you can
okay.
get it on Amazon, you can get it, pretty much any of your. In fact, I think you can even get it through Barnes and Noble. They may not have it on the shelf, but I know you can order it there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But
And
if you order from us, I mean, we send it out like the next day. We have a great production manager, and when she gets that order, man, it's either out that day or the next day.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So again, guys, Ascension Ministries is where you can get the book or on Amazon. You can check it out and maybe get it directly. It's always nice for authors when we sell it directly. It just cuts out some of the Amazon middleman a
Yeah,
little
well,
bit.
I don't get anything when Amazon sells it.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
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 I should say the ministry does, and that's one thing the Lord told me to do was don't worry about taking any kind of a royalty, just put it all into the ministry.
yeah, yeah.
So everything
Absolutely.
goes to help us get this message out.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, Norm, thank you very much for sharing your great research. Very insightful. You've obviously done a lot of research on this, and I think you've caused us all to see things from a fresh perspective, to consider where we're putting our time, where we're putting our money, to be wise with our money. Maybe to set some of that aside outside of the system, as Norm said. So that if a dollar collapse does happen, it probably will. It's probably just a matter of time. We don't know how long, but from judging from history, it would seem that it's simply a matter of time before the dollar collapses again. So, take some of that money and put it possibly in gold, possibly in silver, possibly in cryptocurrencies. None of us knows exactly. Time will tell, but obviously do what you believe is wise, and keep looking up, because the Lord Jesus is coming back. He will
Amen.
establish his kingdom, and when he comes, it's going to be a whole new economy. There won't be any need for gold. All the things that we take, we hold so precious today, will just not exist. in the future. It's going to be so much better. So looking forward to that day. And again, thank you, Norm, for blessing us with your time and for your great research.
Bless you, and thank you for having me, Doug. I always enjoy it.
All right. God bless you. And everyone, stay in the Word. That is the place you got to be, is staying in the Word. Until next time, God bless.